Well, why the chicken fingers? Oh well. What's up, guys? Welcome to here. We want to do a nice little breakdown slash discussion on all that now falls. Now that we finally, and I mean finally, have the whereabouts of the final finger of the king of curses, Ryomen Sukuna. And how hypothetically many things have fallen. But many things may not have fallen, and many things have been confirmed, and many things that have not been confirmed, and all that and more. So let's not waste any more time, and let's hop right into it. Editing me. Ready. 3, 2, 1, go. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do happen to have it on me, and keep it on me at all times. And another fun fact. Ryomen Sukuna's final finger. Now, notably, I'm still in the camp that while we have very solid general ideas of what the fingers do, we still don't have it 100% confirmed. Like, we do not have a specific bullet point list of explaining everything a Sukuna finger does and contains and whatever. There's still debates to this day on whether or not it increases its output, whether or not it just increases its cursed energy amount, whether or not each one could individually incarnate Sukuna. It just is a matter of chance for which one you eat, considering they all contain a part of Sukuna's soul. And we don't even know if, like, they taste different. Like, we legit have no full context on the fingers. But naturally, like any mystery in JJK, the fingers were a blessing and a curse. A blessing in the sense that they allowed Ryomen Sukuna to rise to his true potency and his true ability, but also a curse in the sense that the missing whereabouts of the final finger that was highlighted in chapter 222, a while ago now, considering we're on 251 at the time of recording, but in 222, it's very specifically noted by Ryomen. My deepest apologies. I was unable to find the last finger. I shall accept whatever punishment you deem necessary. It's fine. Satoru Gojo is the last one. Oh, he does? Well, probably. In order to postpone the boy's execution, he proposed the higher-ups that they wait until the boy ate all of my fingers. So, this door was essentially left wide open. Wide open. And then Sukuna himself says, but he wouldn't just sit around and do nothing. But he's holding on to one of my fingers, putting the end sentence on indefinite hold. So, this is essentially why we don't actually have 20-finger Sukuna. This substitute ended up leading to the necessary substitute of the mummy that Sukuna ended up consuming in regards. This is also the major reason why a lot of people just think the fingers just give cursed energy. They don't actually have anything to do with techniques. Any of the unique design properties the fingers have are just that, like unique design just to make them look more different, rather than Gege drawing the same finger over and over and over again. But, honestly, whatever the fingers do is kind of irrelevant, for the most part. But not really, because now we know where the final one is. Or at least we have some context for where it is, what most likely happened to it, and all that could come with that. So, in 251, Yudokotsu reveals, after using Cleave on Ryomen Sukuna, that something transpired with that final finger. Sukuna's fingers. You never recovered the last one. And then Sukuna, after getting punched in the mouth, says, oh, I get it. You ate it. Now, there definitely is some copium we'll address later about the vagueness, and I'd say vagueness in the loosest form, in the sense that it's the same issue that a lot of people are running into 222, because hey, for the longest time, I was a big proponent of, like, Kenny had the final finger, or maybe somebody else had the final finger, or the final finger was hidden, or sealed, or something like that, because Sukuna just makes the assumption here, and once again, Sukuna just doesn't actually know, as he says, well, probably, so we don't actually know, at the time of 222, well, 251, and Yudokotsu very specifically mentioning the finger that was missing and never retrieved. I take this as verbatim, especially with Sukuna's statement right after, oh, I get it, you ate it, as just that. Yudokotsu ate the final finger, or Rika Orimoto ate the final finger. Essentially, the final finger's whereabouts are known, have been consumed, bada bing, bada boom. We'll be going with that most basic interpretation for a majority of this, and we'll talk about everything that could be the case if the finger itself is not actually fully consumed, and whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing in the long term. But, number one, the major thing this confirms is the whereabouts of the final finger. Once again, this wraps up an open plot point. That's the big thing. Notably, Sukuna's fingers, considering what they do facilitate, aka the incarnation of the King of Curses, and considering how much the incarnation seems to be uniform across the fingers, the only thing changing is the amount of cursed energy that is behind the incarnation, The whereabouts and seemingly confirmation of the deletion, essentially, of the final finger is massive. This prevents Sukuna from incarnating again. If, and only if, this Sukuna falls here. This essentially locks us in as final canon Sukuna, for all intents and purposes. Because one of the biggest things I was hoping for our casting crew, that maybe, just maybe, this wouldn't actually be the final battle for Sukuna. Like, this wouldn't actually be Yuji, Todori, and Ryomen Sukuna's final encounter. I figured, hypothetically, they could have this big, intense, proper final battle where they're throwing out the apex of Jujutsus, like domain expansions, terse technique extensions, all that. There's slobberknock and everything, only for the final finger to be like, oh, by the way, Sukuna's still around, still gotta deal with that. And either Yuji condemning Sukuna to his insides by consuming that final finger and acting as a cage until the end of Yuji's days after they defeat this Sukuna, and or Sukuna being incarnated again, but if you think the output varies with the fingers, then much weaker than he was before, and thusly being able to be used as sort of a 1v1 opponent for Yuji. Because of course, one of the biggest things that everyone gets on Yuji's case for is the fact that he never runs ones and he always jumps. So for the final battle between him and Sukuna, a lot of people were hoping that he just incarnate. Whether it be in like Ryomen or a random body, he'd incarnate with that final finger, and then they'd have a proper slobberknock. But with the final finger seemingly enough being consumed by Yuta Kotsu, gone. Knocks that pretty much entirely. I'm not saying it's impossible, but once again, we'll get to that in a second. But simply confirming that this is true final Sukuna, the final finger cannot be used to incarnate him. The only way more Sukuna fingers can come back into play is if he himself does it again, which we know is something he can do. We see him specifically incarnate and split his soul into a single finger. 15 fingers worth of his soul was incarnated into a single Yuji Pinky and then shoved in Megami. And that's how we got this Sukuna. So we know it's not impossible for him to incarnate again, but any previous instances or previous vessels for incarnation have all been destroyed. And if not destroyed, consumed, and that might as well be destroyed. Notably though, there is the mention and the hope that maybe it's still inside Yuta, and maybe it's still inside Rika, depending on who ate it. And the main reason I say this is because in 250, Sukuna very much mentions that Jacob's Ladder should actually, like, target the cursed objects inside Megami Fushiguro, not necessarily Sukuna himself. That's what 251 intends to highlight as well, as Angel themselves explains. That approach should work well with our curse technique. The Angel's curse technique is destruction of a target's curse technique. In a fully fleshed curse, which is still weird, I don't know, this is the official translation. Sukuna's not a cursed last light. He's still a sorcerer. He's an evolved sorcerer, but he shouldn't be whatever. Curse properties, Sukuna being a curse. I don't think he actually is a curse. Like, I don't think, like, he's the king of curses, but curses in, like, the general sense, not curses as the species archetype. If he was a curse, he wouldn't need RCT to regenerate a physical form. But that's another story, another time. I think it's well established, but I've seen a lot of people, once again, because the official translation also mentions fully fleshed curse. What do you mean fully fleshed curse? I think it's something different. But in a fully fleshed curse, the curse technique or a cursed object are in direct connection with the personality, meaning it's possible to remove Sukuna, but the curse technique is immersed in the brain, so the target's chances of survival aren't good. If we could pull apart the two souls to weaken the harmonization between cursed object and flesh, the chances to survive would drastically improve. So this does imply that the objects still exist, meaning that maybe after Sukuna opened the Yuta Okotsu loot box, essentially by splitting him in half here, maybe that allows him to reach inside and, like, pull out the finger if it still exists, because the cursed objects, it still exists in Megami after a whole month of time has passed, which implies that most likely Yuta, who also ate it sometime during the month time skip, would most likely be okay. Or the cursed object he consumed would most likely be okay. Sukuna just doesn't notice it because of Yuta's overwhelming cursed energy. Or if Rika ate it, Rika's infinite cursed energy. But at the same time, kind of leaning against that, like, I don't know. I think it'd be kind of gruesome to see Sukuna start rifling through Yuta's body and trying to rip out a finger. So, final Sukuna being confirmed, that is a big ramification of the final finger being consumed. This means we are pretty much in final battle territory. A lot of people, once again, have been going kind of back and forth on whether or not this is our final encounter with Sukuna, but combine the fact that we do know the whereabouts of the final finger and the fact that it was most likely consumed by Yuta Kotsu, and the fact that Ryomen Sukuna is kind of you know, chopping down characters who could actually be a viable threat against them in this super weakened state, one by one, this does also pretty much confirm final battle. Like, I don't think we're going to get a battle after this, unless it's the merger, but even the merger is going to be a weird thing if that ends up happening, and what ends up going on with that. But another thing this kind of does confirm, as in a roundabout way, once again, if you just take the statement at face value and we trust what Sukuna says here and assumes, because hey, he was right on his assumption in 222, why would he not be right on his assumption in 251, Yuta Kotsu ate the finger. Why did he eat the finger? In order to gain cleave. What does that mean? It means Ryu was right. Now, admittedly, I kinda am still a bit iffy on this, and this does allow for some sort of copium in terms of things I'm going to mention in a little bit, but the confirmation of Yuta's curse technique's property is nice to have. Ryu was right. And don't get me wrong, as a Ryu rider, I'm more than happy that my boy Ryu is right. But that aside, any Ryu glazing aside, Yuta Kotsu having a confirmed condition for his Kabi technique, it unironically, it does the same thing that happens to every other curse technique that gets further elaboration and explanation by Gege. It just makes it worse. Like, for the longest time, you could use the one, I believe it's a TCB scanlation. I forget, I don't think it's in the officials. But Kenjaku says unconditionally copy curse techniques in the TCB scans, I do believe. And, once again, for the longest time, I and many others just assumed Ryu was wrong. Because we didn't see Yuta eat Inumaki. We didn't see Yuta eat Druv. We didn't see Rika eat Druv. We didn't see Rika eat Inumaki. We saw, the only one we saw, we were 1 for 3 with Uro. So we kind of just assumed that was wrong. But Ryu ended up being proven right, and naturally, this makes Yuta just a lot worse. Not necessarily a lot worse, but like, before it was, oh, Yuta may be comparable to the Sharingan, in the sense that as long as he's able to perceive and understand the technique, or in the Sharingan's case, the Jutsu, he'd be able to replicate it. No. He needs to consume a part of his opponent. And while it is fine in most matchups, especially inverse, once you start to take Yuta cross-verse, which is what a lot of people are going to start doing, depending on how this ended up playing out for Yuta, I can't do that all too well. It's going to be hard to imply that he does well against other copy types, because he's going to be limited to his own arsenal until he consumes them, which is unfortunate, to say the very least. It's not necessarily a nerf, it's more so an elaboration and explanation, but like every other elaboration and explanation, ends up being a nerf. Star Rage got further elaboration, ended up getting nerfed. Well, not necessarily nerfed, but kind of soft sort of nerf, like the whole lack of durability boosting thing. For the Limitless, ultimately, yeah, I hate to say it, but it getting revealed that just spatial techniques work on it is a nerf for cross-verse. And obviously inverse as well. It's what Sukuna used to slice him in half, but still, that's a nerf, cross-verse. Now, not necessarily anyone, but presumably anyone who can attack space, and not the people in space, or not target the people in space, they can also just do this to Gojo. Think of like half the Black Clover cast. They volleyball. Or any character who has like decent space manipulation, they can do that to Gojo now. Because the ability was further elaborated on and expanded upon. Even something as powerful and as dangerous as Curse Spirit Manipulation, once it got further elaboration, it just kind of fell off. And unfortunately, Yuta Kotsu is now also a victim of that. Is Copy bad now? No. But the confirmation of the final finger being used as the catalyst for him learning Cleave did pretty hard nerf Akotsu. Makes him a lot more contingent on things that are not guaranteed to happen. Which is very, very unfortunate. But the next thing this actually ends up confirming, if you think it's gone, I'm sorry, Nobara fans. I'm sorry. The copium's cooked. Like, another big thing about the final finger is that a lot of people were hoping and coping. And by people, I mainly mean Nobara fans. Nobara has not been an active part of the series since, I think her end is like pre the 100s. Maybe not. It may be a little bit post. I think it is a little bit post the 100s. But it is it is post the 100s, because it's after the Sukuna encounter and after the leveling of the city. Yeah, so it is definitely post the 100s. But with that being the case, she's been gone for well over 100 chapters at this point. This is the only mention of Nobara as a character in literally 100 chapters. Way back in chapter 210. You can tell Gege forgot how to draw her, too. But a lot of people were hoping and coping. With that final finger still being left up in the air, it was seemingly enough an easy layup. A smooth, buttery pass. And we're going to see Nobara hit the most smooth, buttery windmill dunk on us. Right in the most pivotal moment, when it needed to be done, Noboru Kugisaki was going to strike the final finger with resonance and end up stalling Sukuna just enough for Yuji Itadori to land the definitive Black Flash, Soul Slash, Soul Punch in order to free Megumi Fushiguro from the guts of Ryomen Sukuna. But not only do we have another character stun Sukuna and reveal that Megumi Fushiguro, yeah, he's had enough. Also, the final finger being gone means that there's nothing for Nobara to strike. Now, of course, they're technically... isn't even me. I'm friends with many Nobara Copers. So Nobara Coper themselves came to me with this one. I forget which one it was. I'm sorry. I'm gonna take your idea. But with that being the case, as it was pointed out to me, legally speaking, Sukuna has a bunch of battle parts. Not battle parts. He has a bunch of body parts strewn apart the battlefield like... I don't know, look at, I don't know, maybe his tongue. His tongue, that hand he chopped off earlier, there's probably drops of juice of him everywhere. Like, you clearly see he loses another arm here. So, like, there are definitely other pieces that Nobara can Soul Strike, but essentially, and honestly, these would probably be easier to Soul Strike than the fingers, since the fingers are implied to basically be indestructible. So, maybe Soul Strike Nobara wasn't ever going to be a thing, but the confirmation of the final finger being removed removes that as an aspect for Nobara Copium. Unfort. I'm sorry, all the Nobara Copers out there. Your copium, it truly was strong. I'll remember you as long as I live. But another thing that actually ends up indirectly confirming is it kind of just like hammers some nails into him. Because one of the biggest pieces of copium that I held on to for Satoru Gojo, even though I'm still in the camp that he should not be resurrected, one of the biggest pieces of copium I held on to him was once again that this was not final Sukuna. That maybe someone else could beat this Sukuna, and the final finger could be used to incarnate somebody else. So like, with him, being final Sukuna, and me 100% believing that Itadori Yuji is going to be responsible for defeating Ryomen Sukuna, Gojo Satoru can't come back. Especially now, because now, even with Sukuna launching off a spatial slash at the end of 251, he's way too worse for wear. Like, horridly worse for wear. Like, if Gojo Satoru came back right now, he'd break it. Once again, he'd just break the plot. And kind of just steal Yuji Itadori's spotlight, which is something I don't want. So ultimately, that just knocks a few more nails. Once again, he hasn't been gone as long as the Noboru Kugisaki, so of course her copers are going to be even more that atrocious for this final finger being gone. But Gojo Glazers, they're a close second, and that's the main thing. The finger is a plot thread being wrapped up, and I'm glad it's wrapped up for the most part. Don't get me wrong. I would prefer that we got the answer, rather than us just never knowing. Like, I'm leaning towards the fact we will not see Sukuna's full kit. Like, I'm nigh on 80-20% sure we're not seeing Sukuna's full kit just because of how damaged he is and what it could mean for the rest of the cast if we did see it. So, ultimately, I'm fine with the final finger being eaten by Yuta Kotsu, being done away with, and the plotline being wrapped up. It is not an open plot thread, and that's fine by me. And if you're wondering, since I keep mentioning it, what changes if Yuta didn't actually eat the finger? I mean, the finger's still there. I mean, that's neat. Maybe he took a piece off of it. Maybe, chopped it up and, sauteed it. There's a reference to a specific manga I like to read, but that's super deep into it, and I don't think it's gotten a season. It's a spoiler that I'm not going to cover. But there's a case in that manga where someone takes an ancient relic like Sukuna's finger, chops it up and puts it on pizza for other people to consume. And maybe that's what happened, but once again, remember, the fingers are indestructible. Due to the binding vow placed on them, they're literally indestructible. Meaning that it's very likely you'd have had to the whole thing if he needed that as a requirement to come prepared with cleave. So, the finger's gone. But if it isn't, I guess Nobara Copium is still alive. I guess Second Sukuna is still alive. And I guess maybe there's a chance for Gojo Sato, but at this point, I don't buy it. I think assuming the finger was not legitimately consumed at this point is straight Copium. This is, like, I don't know how much clearer Gege could make it other than showing us a verbatim flashback of Yuta eating it. But now, with Yuta in half, that does not really matter. At least in my opinion. But, ultimately, that's what I think. Please what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you think the final finger is finally wrapped up? We don't have to worry about that plot point anymore, and now we're just able to move on to the future, knowing that this is the final battle? Or do you think there's still more hope and cope to be had? Please let me know all that and more in the comment section down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, please leave Finger Feast. Leave Finger Feast in the comment section down below. I do thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure you hit that little notification bell so you don't miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do happen to have a picture below where you can support me for as little as $1 month. Things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also become a member of the channel for as little as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Some of those perks will include the live reactions to the very next chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen, ad-free variations of all my videos, and if you become a $25 patron or a $25 member, you can order whatever video you want. Now, I'd like to thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Tyler Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members, O'Connor Plays, Greyhound, Kids Void, Astro, and Red Wolf 4765. I'd like to give another thank you to our $5 patrons, Victor, Steron, Sean, RNG Master, Midnight Lord 21, Kevin, Jermaine, Igneal, EHAC1, and Demix LND. And I'd like to give another thank you to our $7 members, Autumn, Mornings Lazo, Sick Addiction, and Jan Toma. And I'd like to give another gargantuan thank you to our $10 member, Jay Warrior. And I'd like to give another thank you to our two $10 patrons, Joaquin and Item Okami. And I'd like to give a hefty thank you to our $25 member, Alex Ice Rose. And I'd like to give another gargantuan thank you to our $25 patron, Winter. Another hefty thank you to our $25 patron, China Doll 09. And a final gargantuan thank you to our $25 patron, Calvin Elder.